welcome to the Meant for More, the only podcast that you need to make your life a masterpiece. And today we have a fascinating topic. I've tried everything but a hypnosis. I'm definitely tried a lot of things, and hypnosis is on the list of the things I'm curious about and I want to know more. That's why I've brought today a very special guest, Teresa, which would help she would help us to demystify hypnosis. Let's dive straight into it. Hi Teresa. What's the biggest misconception people have about hypnosis?
Thank you, Kristina. I would say that the biggest thing people worry about is loss of control, that it's mind control. And I think this often comes from things like in Hollywood, in media, in movies, and it just looks mystical and magical, and it looks dangerous and unsafe, and people have fears about it. And so it's given it a bad rep, and so people are just very hesitant to give it a try. But I'm here to help explain it and understand that it is not mind control. You remain totally alert and in control and aware and having normal thoughts the entire time. You can't get stuck in it. You can come out at any time you want. You can uh, uh, stop if you want. You can reject things if they don't align with your goals and your beliefs. It's not truth serum. You can't be forced to lie in hypnosis. You usually remember everything that happens. You can always hear the hypnotist talking. So it is not what Hollywood has put it out to be.
All right. I definitely had this idea that there is someone able to get into my mind.
No,
No.
don't have that talent. No,
And
not possible. No,
alterations that I cannot undo.
no, yes, no, you're always in control. And all hypnosis is truly self-hypnosis. So a hypnotist, think of a hypnotist as a guide. They're guiding you to this natural, normal mental state in your subconscious mind that you actually access on your own without even knowing it. So you and everyone have been in a state of hypnosis in the past. For example, if you've ever watched a movie and you got so engrossed in the story that your heart started pounding when something exciting happened, and then someone might enter the room and you don't even know they're there because you are just focused and you are just inwardly uh, um, pulled into the story, your imagination is activated, that is a hypnotic state. Or for people who drive, if you've ever gone on a drive and you do the same route every day, and you pass your exits and you are just in your own world and your own thoughts, you're still safe. If someone cut you off, you would still respond. You're still aware, but you're not fully conscious mind recording everything, right? That's a hypnotic trance state, a highway hypnosis, we call it. So people have been in this mental state before. It is natural and it is normal and it is safe. A hypnotist is just guiding you into that state so that you can use that state, that powerful subconscious mind, to make changes that you want to make in your life. So it's purposeful, it's structured, there's a goal to it. And most people don't know how to access that state on purpose all by themselves. So that's why you need a guide. And to explain how it's not mind control, I would just say think of the guide as like in a dance. Um, if I was teaching you the steps to a dance, I would show you the steps, but I cannot force your legs to move. I cannot force your feet to follow me. I cannot force somebody to follow my instructions and go into hypnosis because it's their hypnosis. It's their subconscious mind. It's their mental state. They have to do it on their own. I'm just guiding.
Wow, so much to unpack there. So, in your work, hypnotic state has a goal.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So, we
Mm-hmm.
are entering into hypnosis with a certain goal, and
Yes.
you always remain in control.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's interesting about control. When we are in hypnotic state, do we lose control of the parts of our memories that we don't need, or do we gain different kind of control? What's happening
Uh,
there?
that's good. That's a good question. I absolutely think you're gaining control because we have to step back and kind of understand the mind. So the classic three component model of the mind is like if you've ever seen the iceberg model of the mind, you have to think about this. There's the part you can see above the water, that's the conscious mind, okay? And that is what you and I are operating in now. It's the busy beta wave brains, okay? And it's logical, it's analytical, it's got our inner critic, it's not huge, it can only focus on a few things at a time, right? And then there's under the surface of the water is the subconscious mind. And that's where like the majority of our mental brain functioning occurs. That is where all of our memories are stored, even the ones we can't access. That is where all of our beliefs are held, even the false beliefs. That is where all of our thoughts and feelings and emotions come from. That's where our fear is stored. That's where our habits come from, even our bad habits. So our subconscious mind is vast, and it is where all of these things occur. So in hypnosis, we have to access that subconscious mind, and it's protected because it also holds our personality. That's who we are. That's who we really are. And it would be invitation, it wouldn't be a good idea if we would change our personality throughout our life, right? So it resists change. And that's a good thing because we don't want to change throughout our life unless if there's something we want to change, right? So then that's why we need hypnosis. So hypnosis does something called bypassing the critical factor. It's also called the threshold of suggestibility, but I'd like to think of it as like a gatekeeper, okay? So there's a gatekeeper in between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, and that prevents new information from coming in and being absorbed as truth, as belief, if it is not matching what's currently in there. So if I were to say to you in the conscious mind, you are relaxed, calm, and confident at all times, and you're a person who's struggling with anxiety, and your conscious mind goes, that's not true, I'm not relaxed, I'm not confident and calm all the time. That's your critical factor pushing back and saying that doesn't match what's recorded in my subconscious mind. That's not true. So your body is not going to accept that as your new truth. But in hypnosis, we change our brainwave states, and we change into a different brainwave state, the alpha waves or the theta waves, the delta waves. Those are the ones where we're asleep, but it's a slower brainwave state. And when we change that brainwave state, we can bypass this gatekeeper, this critical factor, and then we can get the subconscious mind to start being open to accepting suggestions that are in our best interest and that align with our goals. So if I gave you a suggestion that every day from now on, you will be more and more confident and motivated as a fireman or something like that, and you don't want to be a fireman, you're not going to accept that because that's not aligning with your goals, right?
Okay.
So it has to be something that you want, and then if it aligns with what you are desiring or your values, then the subconscious mind can accept it and rewire and change. And that's where real transformation can come from.
Oh my God, this is fascinating and also a bit complicated.
Yeah.
I'm gonna layer it. I'm gonna try to put layers to it.
Okay.
We have subconscious mind,
Mm.
which doesn't like change,
Correct. Yes.
resists the change, and I know it.
Yeah.
And
And willpower alone cannot override that.
and willpower is weak. I
It
know.
just doesn't get into that level. It comes from the conscious mind. It doesn't get to the subconscious level.
Okay, and so this conscious mind is a bit of a gatekeeper.
The critical factor is kind of in between, and that's the gatekeeper. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically, that's what happens, I think, a bit with um, motivational mantras. If you say,
Yeah.
I'm confident, I'm
Yes.
confident, but there is a part of your brain like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
Yes,
We're not doing
the
this.
inner critic is rejecting it. Yes, that's
Right.
because you've got the gatekeeper, and the conscious mind is doing its best, but it cannot get to that subconscious level of change. Yeah.
Okay. And hypnosis, whatever you come with, helps to quiet the inner critic, the conscious mind, and
Yes.
create new set of beliefs.
Yes. That can be accepted, and they can actually rewire the subconscious mind for this change. And the subconscious mind is where our imagination lives, and it's amazing to think that it doesn't really understand the difference between imagination and reality. So when you're experiencing this hypnosis imagination, and you're utilizing it, you can actually get your mind to rewire it as if it's reality. So
Okay.
your brain actually starts thinking of it as your new truth.
This is something I definitely use in my coaching as neuroencoding specialist. We use a visualization technique
Yes.
to help you understand what you want, because people are sometimes confused.
Oh, yes.
Understand what you want and imagine how you want it. And with more details you can imagine it, the closer you're bringing that into your life. And when I did research on visualization, I get to know that Olympic athletes are using visualization as a part of their technique. And every day before in training, they will be also visualizing how they're running, how they're crossing, what is the time now. And I was like, you know what? If it's good enough for Olympic athletes, it's good enough for me. And that was so powerful. All right. 1 million questions I still have here. So basically, for something to be accepted on subconscious mind, you need to, in some capacity, want it.
Yes. So, for example, smoking cessation, stopping smoking, is
Let's
a
talk
very
about,
common.
forget about smoking. Let's talk about quitting sweets. Like,
Okay, yeah, another good one. I was gonna say that's a very common thing people come for, but the second common thing is weight management and addiction to sugar, craving sweets, right? Perfect. So if somebody brought their relative to a hypnotist and said, I want you to help them quit sweets, okay?
mm,
But that person doesn't actually want to quit sweets. They think they're fine. They don't really want it. It is not going to work. You have to want it. Does that make sense? Like, you have to feel, in order to be hypnotized, in order for a hypnotherapy session to help you, you have to be willing to go through the process, and you have to be willing to make the change. And then you also have to be free from fear, worry, and anxiety of hypnosis. So if somebody is nervous or afraid of what hypnosis is or what will happen to them, they will not go into hypnosis. It will not work. They will not be hypnotized. So the most important thing we do is actually what you and I are doing right now. It's called the pre-talk, and it's talking about it, explaining it, going through questions, concerns, fears, understanding what hypnosis is. And if you do the pre-talk correctly and fully, and the person has no more questions, they understand, they're not afraid of it, then it works. Yeah.
ooh. So if we are stressed, worried, alarmed, it's not gonna work. I have a super complicated question for you.
Okay.
And I apologize in advance. So there is something we say we want, right? For example, I've been saying, oh, I want to lose this 5 kgs. But once I start layering it on some crazy subconscious level, I don't want to do it.
Sure. Yes.
So there is some subconscious resistance to this change. I don't think I really want it. So if person walks in with this awareness into hypnosis,
Mhm.
what happens? What happens when, and this happens in my work, I see that people want something, but
Yep.
on subconscious level, they are so scared or so uncomfortable or so unsure of that result,
Yep.
they resist it.
Yes, this is actually super common. And that's why the type of transformative hypnosis training that I have received, it has um, 5 different parts to it. And one of the parts is called parts mediation. And basically, we divide the subconscious into the parts that want to change and don't want to change, and we mediate. We talk it through, and the self talks to the not wanting to change self, and they come to an agreement of what we're going to do, how are we going to satisfy your wants and needs and desires, and how are we going to decide and to satisfy your wants and needs and desires. And then the person does this work, by the way, all on their own. I'm the guide. They're doing this work themselves, but they mediate these 2 parts of themselves, and they come to an agreement that everyone is comfortable with and a plan. So it's super common, and there's a technique for it.
Oh my God, I love it. The parts of your brain have a conversation. This is things of the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Mhm.
I absolutely love it. And they come to an agreement.
Yes.
Perfect. What did you see? What kind of challenges respond
Mm,
particularly well to hypnotherapy?
sure. I like to say it's like if you ever go to a hypnosis website, it's like this laundry list of things, and it's just like so many different random things. It's like, well, how do you narrow it down? But basically, I like to say if it resides in the mind, hypnosis could help, because there's just so many things that our subconscious mind controls, right? But things that work really well, uh, things that are like too much behaviors or overdoing it behaviors, like over shopping or over gambling or over smoking or overeating. Those over behaviors, very common, that can work with hypnosis. Another thing that's very understood and accepted, especially in the medical community, is pain management. Hypnosis has been studied and works well for not only chronic pain, but also procedural pain, also labor pain. It's
Oh,
used there. Yep. So pain is definitely understood. Fears and phobias and anxieties, also very common, especially the ones that people don't really know where they came from, but like fear of flying, fear of needles, fear of driving, fear of snakes. Those things have been worked on in hypnosis before. And then, of course, there's the self improvement things like building your confidence, um, realizing your self worth, toning down that negative self talk, that inner critic. Uh, Learning more about your life purpose, connecting to your higher
oh
self.
wow.
These more spiritual things can also happen during hypnosis.
Oh wow, this is so interesting. Connecting to your higher self, overdoing things, magical. I'm writing it down. Um, in your experience, and I'm very curious, I'm sure many listeners are curious too. Finding your purpose. What in your work, what did you understood about helping people find their purpose? Do we have one purpose for each person? Is one person have multitude of purposes? How does it really work?
That's where that word of insight comes from. So there's something that happens when you go into hypnosis and you access that deep, powerful, big subconscious mind. You start just getting insights and new thoughts and new beliefs, and they just start coming up, and maybe not even in the session, maybe days or weeks later, you'll just start having downloads or insights that come to you, and those insights can just lead you to understand more about yourself. You learn more about your past, more about why you do the things you do, why you have your habits, why you have your um, different thoughts, and why those come up, and it just guides people. And it's very interesting how it can happen just organically, that someone just all of a sudden knows thyself in a way that they didn't before.
Okay, you're clearly super knowledgeable about hypnosis. Tell us more. How did you come to the hypnosis? And what are the certifications or qualifications that you
Mm.
have right now, which makes you so experienced in hypnosis?
Sure, sure, sure. So I was a nurse, a registered nurse in the United States for 16 years. I worked in the hospitals and the clinics. And during my early days in the hospital, I, like many people, was getting stressed out by my job. And I was getting anxiety and I was getting very tense, right? Because especially in the hospital setting, there's a lot of like you're seeing people at sometimes their worst day of their life, right? There's a lot of suffering, and I was sensitive and internalizing some of that. So I was dealing with stress and anxiety from work, which is not uncommon in this world. And I became pregnant with my first child. I'd been married for a couple of years, and I found myself expecting a baby, and I started having just this severe worry about being anxious and having a panic attack in labor. And I started getting so concerned about how am I going to handle this upcoming delivery, that I started searching for something, anything that works to handle this kind of worry. And I found self-hypnosis. So I found a program for pregnant women that teaches self-hypnosis for childbirth. And I took the class. It was an in-person class, and they gave me the instructions in hypnosis on how to go into self hypnosis and what that is like. I learned all about it, and then I started practicing every day, and that was 13 years ago. So I've been using self hypnosis for a very long time for myself, and I found that it's so powerful that I went along to end up having 4 children, and I used self hypnosis in all of my labors and deliveries, and I was able to do all of those naturally without epidurals. And I did not look for hypnosis for pain management, but that's what I found, is that it was an excellent way to manage not only anxiety but pain as well. So that's how I found hypnosis. Now, ever since then, I've been just super interested about it, reading about it whenever I could, and I always dreamed of becoming a hypnotist, but life happens and I had kids and it never made sense to go back to study it. Um, but there was a patient, and I'll never forget this patient in the hospital, who had just came out of a major surgery. He was in terrible, terrible pain. And we nurses, we have a toolkit of knowledge in our heads of things we can use, ice packs, distraction, of course, narcotics, repositioning. There's all these things we try, but with this individual, nothing was working, and he was just in agony, screaming. So I wasn't even his nurse, but I came down the hall to see how I could help, because you could hear him down the hall. And they were at the point where they were going to transfer him to the intensive care unit for pain management because he was so miserable. So we were waiting for the transport, and there was nothing we could do. We were just standing there watching him suffer. It was terrible. So I just started talking to him with the voice of my hypnotherapist that I could hear in my head from all of my practice. And I just told him to focus on holding my hand, just focus on the sound of my voice. And every breath you take, you'll become more and more relaxed. And anything that's discomfort, anything that feels uncomfortable is going to just fade away now. And that's all I said. And this man just visibly sank down, and his breathing relaxed, and his voice calmed, and he just sunk down into the bed, and he was calm. And it was just that moment. I was like, this is powerful stuff. Like I didn't do anything. I just talked. And you can just see how words are so powerful. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the moment I was like, I've got to find a way to do this. So I eventually did, and now here I am. I am a certified consulting hypnotist through the National Guild of Hypnotists, one of the oldest organizations for hypnosis in the world, through the United States. And yeah, I love it. But you have to go through hundreds of hours of in-person training, testing to become certified. It's not something you can just learn quickly on your own. There's always something new to learn.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
It's beautiful how those moments happen to us and
Mhm.
change the trajectory of our lives.
Yes.
Gifts, those momentary gifts.
Mm.
You mentioned that words are powerful.
Yes.
So, how would you describe then our subconscious mind in
Mm.
super simple terms?
Yes. So, like I said, the subconscious mind is vast, and that's where everything is stored. But it starts off as a blank slate when you're born, and it slowly builds with every experience you have, every new um, belief or thought or emotion. And sometimes they're not even yours. They're, as a child, they're taking in and internalizing things they hear from others, right? So if a child hears, "You're not good enough," or they feel that someone is sending them the signal that there's something wrong with them or they're not lovable, this thing becomes internalized and becomes their negative self-talk, becomes a belief in their subconscious, and that will follow them their whole life if they cannot clear it themselves. So that's why people talk about doing inner work. That's what hypnosis does. It gets in there, and we find the negative, and we empty the cup. We call it emptying the cup of the negative emotions. But another visual would be like, imagine a pressure cooker, and that's your subconscious mind. That's your emotions, okay? And every single thing that happens to you throughout your life is just piling on and piling on. And if you're not releasing that, it's building stress and it's building tension inside of your body. And so you have to find a way to let these negative things out, or they're going to be triggering you throughout your life. This negative thought or belief that you maybe have internalized as a child will resonate with something in your present moment, and it'll cause you to just boil over and snap and be triggered, and you won't even know why, because you won't remember the initial event that put it in there typically, but your subconscious mind does. It's in there.
I have two questions, one as a mother and one comment as a business mentor. When I started working with business owners, I realized there are some who are making progress and others don't. And that was 10 years back. And I was so curious to understand. We provide the same foundations, we give the same knowledge, we give the same support. And then I realized it's the mindset, the set of beliefs the person comes in to build a business determines whether they will be or not be able to apply systems, apply strategies, and get to the next level. And that's why when we moved to Singapore 4 years ago, I went to receive my coaching certifications because I understood being capable as a consultant, as a business knowledge, is limited to the beliefs the person holds about himself, about the world, and about running a business. So that's definitely waved in into my work right now. And as a mother, I was really impressed how random my kids would remember some facts from their past. There would be this amazing event and they will not remember it. And there would be something random. We would go and buy a candy in the store. And they would remember it, which something happened then when we were crossing the road. And I would be like, I don't remember that day. How does our mind chooses those events to store and give them meaning?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I'm not sure if I can even explain or understand how the conscious mind pulls things, but what I can explain is how the subconscious mind truly does record every significant event of your life. It is in there. And I didn't even believe that before I started studying hypnosis, but I have found it time and time again through the process of what we call age regression. In a hypnosis state, we can go back and we can retrieve the repressed memories, the forgotten memories. And sometimes they may not be that intense to an adult, but to the child, it was impactful. To the child, it could have even been trauma. And that is the seed that started planting these problems that followed the person the rest of their life. So can I explain why the conscious mind pulls things and not others? I think it has to do with protection. I think at the end of the day, our conscious mind is trying to protect us from things. And so our subconscious mind is also trying to protect us from things. And even our unconscious mind, I mean, we didn't really touch on the unconscious mind yet at all, but the unconscious mind, that autonomic nervous system, that's where you get your fight or flight response, your heart rate, your breathing, your reflexes. It protects you from infections. So there's this whole other section we haven't even talked about yet, but that part of the mind is also very hard to control on our own, right? But they all have a purpose, and they're all trying to protect us. So your mind is very powerful, and the ways it works, I mean, I don't know why it protects us in the way it does, but it's all in there. That's the amazing thing.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Questions, more questions.
Yeah.
When you are with the client in this hypnotic state and you access the memory, which consciously the client does not remember, is it possible that this memory never existed at the
That's
first
a good question. That's a
and
good question.
mind is just building it up?
Yes. So we're not practicing like forensic hypnosis. Okay, so we're not looking for historical accuracy or truth, because that doesn't really matter in the moment. What matters is that your subconscious mind has this recording, has this belief, and whether or not it's historically true, it's still impacting you. Whether or not it's true, whether or not it happened the way you're believing it or remembering it, or at all, it's something that your mind is holding on to, and it's something that we need to just reframe and get a different perspective on, and look at with the knowledge that we have now as an adult, and say, gosh, wouldn't it have been good or better to know then what we know now? Would I have handled this situation differently? Would I have become so fearful? Would I have become so negative looking at myself if I had known what I know now as an adult? So we reframe that. We look at it differently with new eyes, and that little shift alone is sometimes enough, because like I said, in the hypnosis state, it will rewire your subconscious mind to accept new beliefs. So if you can look at an event that happened to you as a child and say, you know what, I got through it, I survived, I'm okay. Yeah, that wasn't a pleasant experience, but I'm better for it because now I understand something new about myself, and you can reshift that perspective, then the other issues sometimes fade away.
Okay, that is interesting. I'm straight away getting greedy. How many beliefs can we rewire?
Mm. Well, as long as you want to keep working on yourself, there's always new things to learn and do, right? What we say generally is hypnosis works best one thing at a time. So work on one goal. When you get through that, when you've accomplished it, then work on something new.
Okay. So this morning, I was thinking about the trait I see in women who are building businesses. Oftentimes, a lot of first time entrepreneurs are trying to run before they can walk. What do you mean? What do I mean by that? Oftentimes, we want to do things like big brands do. We want to create that kind of visibility. And people say, oh, but I don't have 10,000 followers yet, so to say, or I don't have my first 100 clients yet. I believe that we need to grow organically the capacity to manage the number of people, to manage the amount of attention that we are getting. And when the change happens too fast, and I've seen that, people without help will burn out. Rapid growth comes with risks. Your mind, your soul, your body gotta grow over time to reach certain capacity. So when I think about hypnosis, what are the risks of increasing that capacity, changing dramatically this belief? What can go wrong?
Hmm. It's very safe. I don't really see much risk like that. I think the one thing that can occur is sometimes it can be a very emotional process, and you have to be prepared to process those emotions because the way out is through, right? You need to fully experience them and fully sit with them. And so sometimes that can be uncomfortable, right? So I think just going in knowing that you might have some baggage to empty, you might have some negative to process, and it can be uncomfortable. Um, the risks, though, I mean, hypnosis is very safe. It's well studied and it's effective. I don't see that kind of risk for expansion, but what I would say is that anything gets better with practice, right? So I think the same thing is what you're saying. So if you're working on yourself every single time you do a self-hypnosis practice, you're getting better and better at getting into the hypnotic state. You're getting better at understanding yourself as a person, at understanding your life history and your experiences, and then you can slowly change. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one only risk is that the emotion, the memory would be very big and you would need time to process that.
Yes, yeah. You have to be prepared for that, and there's things we can do to help that along the way.
No,
Mm-hmm.
that is beautiful. I think this is very important to help once that memory is already surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, I realized I know nothing about self-hypnosis. So, what's the difference between using a professional to get you in hypnotic state and doing
Mm-hmm.
self-hypnosis? What self-hypnosis is? What can it help? I want to know.
Yes. So most situations, the two types of self-hypnosis I have learned, it starts working with a professional and actually being taught hypnosis in the hypnotic state. So you are first hypnotized, you get
Okay.
into that deeply relaxed, slower brainwave state where your subconscious mind is open to suggestion, and then you are taught how to access this on your own. And we can be taught how to access this on our own in different ways. One way is like a physical anchor, so like finger movement. You know, every time I move my finger a certain way, that'll help me get into this hypnotic state. Or a different technique is a certain statement, a certain set of words that's said. And when you say those words to yourself in your head, that'll bring you into the hypnotic state. So you first need to be taught how to access it. And then once you're in it, it depends on what you want to do. But if you want to just give yourself what's called direct suggestions, then you just basically repeat those positive affirming statements to yourself, but they work in a different way than a positive affirmation in the conscious state. Because again, you're bypassing the gatekeeper, you're bypassing the critical factor, so they actually are being accepted by the subconscious mind. So that's the difference is you're able to actually create change when you're telling yourself these positive affirmations while in hypnosis. And you
Oh,
can do it on your own in the comfort of your own home.
okay, so through my neuroencoding method, I've
Mm-hmm.
been trained to associate certain words or certain movements with certain emotions, right? So when I would say a certain phrase, I would straight away feel more energized.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be
Yeah.
something like a self hypnosis?
If you're doing it when your brain is actually in those slower brain waves and you are in that hypnotic state, that hypnotic trance where your subconscious mind is accessible, then yes, those would be great techniques to do in hypnosis. People have found that they can actually learn better, study more when they're in hypnosis, like listening to the things they're trying to learn. It's more accepted and they retain it better. People have found that they can problem solve better while they're in hypnosis because like I said, you're accessing that larger part of your brain.
Mm.
So there's so many different things that can be applicable for and techniques you can use once you're able to access your subconscious mind.
And basically, once you master the self-hypnosis, you can learn to operate in these lower brain waves, which
Yes.
give you access to all the information
Yes.
that you might potentially need.
Mm.
Oh my God, I love it. That is so cool. Something we need to know as the end users, as the recipients of the hypnosis about brain waves.
Mm.
Something
So
important to understand before deciding going
it's
into hypnosis.
just to the understanding that it's measurable. So when they've done EEG studies on people in the awake state, in the hypnotic state, in the brain, and in the sleep state, they can see the physical changes in the brain waves, so that it's measurable.
Okay.
So for the people who feel like hypnosis is fake, like that's something that is data that they can see. And even in MRI scans, a person in the awake state versus the hypnotic state, different parts of the brain are lighting up. So it's a measurable, real, solid thing that's been studied. I think that's the biggest thing for people to understand. But we go through different brainwave states, like when we go into sleep. We actually pass through hypnosis brainwave states right before we fall asleep and right when we wake up every day, as we go into the deeper sleep states. So it's very natural to do this.
Oh, right. I know that you have a self-hypnosis training coming up.
Yes,
Would you
yes, I
share
do.
a bit more about it?
It's in person. It's experiential. It's very small and intimate on purpose because we're going to go through the entire process of what hypnosis is and isn't, and then we're going to go into hypnosis one-on-one. I'm going to teach the group how to do that, and we're going to practice it. And then it's 6 weeks because every week we learn a new technique and we build upon that. And we need to practice throughout the week to get very good at each technique before you can learn the next one. So it's a 6-week course. It's in person. It's in Bukatima, and I'm super excited to teach this to others.
All right, help us here. That sounds amazing. What kind of problems, life circumstances, what kinds of pains someone might be experiencing when they're saying, you know what, Teresa, I want to come to you and I want to learn self-hypnosis. Who is it for?
I truly believe it's for everyone. Because here's the thing, everyone has that thing in their heart, in their mind, and in their body that they wish they could change, but they just can't. You might be struggling with anxiety. You might be struggling with self-worth, self-love. You might be struggling with a fear. You might be struggling with a pain. You might be struggling with a habit, a bad habit that you just cannot get rid of. But everyone has something. Everyone does. And hypnosis can help. It has for so many people. So it's very underutilized. I don't think it should be the last resort. I think it should be the first resort. It's just so fast. There's been studies that, talk therapy is excellent, amazing. It can make people feel safe. It can make people feel understood and connected. But they've done studies where talk therapy, it can take 600 sessions to get maybe 600 sessions to maybe get like a 30 or 40% improvement in whatever they're trying to improve. And then the same studies, they're finding hypnosis can just take 6 to get like a 90-something% improvement. That was a study back in the 70s. There's been much stronger studies since then. There's a study in 2024 that was just very robust, and it just looked across many, many different studies, and they all show improvement with hypnosis. So it's very measurable. It's very real.
Wow. 6 versus 600. It's huge.
Yep, that was just one study from the 70s, so there's even better ones now.
Okay. Let's talk about your clients. And we're going to drop the link to the information about the upcoming training in the
Yeah.
comment section. So always like, follow. What else? Yeah, share with a friend. Um, let's talk about your client stories. What
Hmm.
was the recent client moment that really surprised you?
Hmm. That's a good question. So I want to preface this with I take confidentiality, client privacy extremely seriously. So I would never talk about any of this without permission. But I did ask one person if I could share their story, and she agreed. Um, this client, she had already done so much inner work herself, but she had a history where her father was angry and even abusive growing up as a child, and she had worked through a lot of it all by herself, and she had talked to him about it, and she thought she had processed a lot of it, but then she found out that he was dying, and he was in a different country, and she did not get back in time to talk to him before he passed. And she thought that she had handled it okay, but she still felt regret in her heart about this. And she still felt like there were things left unsaid. And in just one hypnosis session, she wasn't my client, but she told me the story, and I was there during this hypnosis session. Just one hypnosis session, she was able to go through a guided process of visualizing her father coming to her and having a conversation. And in that conversation, she and him discussed everything that they needed to say, everything that was left unsaid, and all of the things that were still heavy on her heart. And then she was given suggestions that she would feel better and that she would release this guilt and this hurt. And still she feels so much peace from that. Just this one session really cleared something that was heavy for her.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, it was very powerful to witness.
That is so powerful. What
Mm-hmm.
I've came to realize, there is a lot of pain behind the closed doors.
Mm.
People smile, people went on with their lives, but once you have this sit down, honest conversation, which we often do in coaching process, you realize how much every person carries.
Yeah, everyone's battling a battle that you do not see. They're struggling with something silently that they're not talking about. Everyone is. Yeah. So just be
Absolutely.
kind always.
And
Hmm.
just having those tools to
Hmm.
elevate human pain one
Yeah.
person at a time is so powerful. Definitely a gift that should be used. Thank you for doing this work, Teresa.
Mm.
Okay, and let's say, what is the small change you've seen that can create a huge ripple effect? Because
Mm.
we believe that, I believe, I've seen it, like tiny 5% change can just totally change the trajectory of your life. What's been
Yes.
your experience with that?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And it almost is, to me, it's always, every time I've seen it happen, it's the misperceptions of the child you once were, of an event that happened to you that is small and seemingly not a huge deal. But when you find it and you rename it and re-understand it with the knowledge of your adult self, it's just a shift in perspective, and it's small, but that shift can just melt away an issue like a fear or an anxiety or a stress response or an anger response. And it's just this one event from your past that you can just shift perspective on. It just ripple effects every other time you felt that way. You can now go through it again in your mind and feel better.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. This is crazy. Basically, if you go back to one
Hmm.
event and you would
Hmm.
be able to
Hmm.
reprogram it.
Hmm. Yeah, we
Oh,
call it the initial sensitizing event, the initial event in your life that sensitized you to this emotion or this thing. Hmm.
wow.
It can be the root cause of your struggle.
What a bit, because I think whatever you're struggling with today, whatever is not working, there is a reason.
Yes.
There is,
And you probably can't figure it out on your
and the
own.
first time, and I see people are trying to basically trim the bush where the problem is in the roots.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. You got to get to the bottom of it.
you gotta get to the bottom of it to actually experience the real change.
Correct. Yep. Otherwise, you're just struggling and forcing willpower alone. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, amazing. And let's talk about what change hypnosis cannot fake.
Mm. I mean, the best example of that is something called hypnoanesthesia, which is okay, so picture this. Hang on. Losing my voice. Hypnoanesthesia or hypnoanalgesia, which is basically reducing pain or taking away sensation, has been used and is being used now in surgeries. So back hundreds of years ago, before there was anesthesia, they would use the hypnotic trance state to do surgery on people. And if you try to imagine having a major surgery done on your body, scalpel and all, and not screaming,
Ooh.
not moving,
Oh wow.
not crying, you can't fake that. But they do it under hypnosis. And they have good outcomes. And so that's being used now for people who are allergic to anesthesia. They're doing surgeries under hypnosis, and they have done this in the past. So to me, you cannot fake that. I couldn't. And I know that analgesia works because I've used it on myself with my own labors, of course. I was able to process pain differently in my brain with hypnosis. But I also just used it recently when I got a tattoo.
You've got a tattoo.
I got it for my 40th birthday. I treated myself to a tattoo. And I used my self-hypnosis during the process. And my beautiful tattoo artist initially thought it would take maybe 5 hours, maybe 2 days. We were going to split it up into 2 different sessions. So we booked 2 days. And she got the whole thing done in 3.5 hours. And I don't even think I asked to take a break once, except to put my socks on because my feet got cold. And she just blew through the work because she thought was asleep, but I was not asleep. I was in hypnosis. I was awake and alert, and I knew everything that was going on the whole time. But I was using my self-hypnosis to manage the sensations so I could sit still for her, and be comfortable. And at the end, she told me I needed to wake up, and I said, "Oh, okay, I'm not sleeping." And then we talked about it, and I explained what self-hypnosis was, and so she ended up inviting me to her studio to talk to her and her artist colleagues about what hypnosis is and how it can help with procedural pain management. And I did a demonstration about how you can even numb somebody's arm with hypnoanesthesia. So yeah, it's so powerful, but you cannot fake that.
Wow, this is really fascinating. This is something which I wish everyone who's going through an uncomfortable procedure could have access to.
Yes. Hypnodontics is a thing, using hypnosis and dental work. Very, very common also. It's a thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about it in terms of different procedures which we don't want to do, but we have to. How many hours, and that's me, the nerd, sorry, how many hours someone need to dedicate to self-hypnosis to be able to go into uncomfortable procedure and be like, okay, I can handle it?
That's a good question. So I've been practicing this, like I said, since 2012. Okay. But what we ask our new students who are learning is to simply dedicate 5 minutes twice a day, and then at bedtime for the first week.
Okay.
So 3 times a day, just 5 minutes practicing, but truly don't quit. Don't skip. Just do the homework.
Yeah.
And then we build it up to a goal of 20 minutes twice a day, and then also at bedtime. And the
Okay.
magical thing about doing it at bedtime is somebody called it a knockout pill. You start doing this hypnotic work when you're in bed, ready to go to sleep, and you just fall right asleep. So we don't put a time on that because you're going to fall right asleep. So it really helps with insomnia and things like that too. But yeah, our goal is 20 minutes twice a day is really all the time you need to commit to it.
Yeah, I've
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of people struggle with insomnia.
Mm-hmm. Just
Is
the racing thoughts in your mind. Yeah.
it's hypnosis something it could help with?
Absolutely. People use it for sleep. Hmm.
Hmm.
Because you're turning off in some ways the conscious mind. You're telling it to quiet down. Let's turn down the volume on all those thoughts and let's just let this imaginative, powerful subconscious mind come to the front for a bit. Hmm.
Okay.
And remember, those are the slower brain waves, which are closer to the sleep state, anyways. Hmm.
What is your perspective? What are your thoughts about pre-recorded hypnotic meditations or
Hmm.
audios? I don't know what
Yeah,
would
they're
be the
great.
correct term.
Yeah, yeah, they're great. I think, uh, especially if you uh, have practiced already with a hypnotist a few times and you know what you're aiming for and you know what it feels like and you know what you're trying to get, they're amazing. I think some people that's all they've used is just audios and they work very well if you can follow along and you can do it and it's done by a trained hypnotist who knows the right things to say. They're very powerful. That's what I used when I was learning the childbirth self-hypnosis was audio recordings. But I did start off in a one-to-one classroom setting getting trained first. So I would say that those are a great supplement for like once you learned it a few times, but they're very powerful. They work.
Wow, guys, check those out. All right.
Mhm.
That's been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure
Yeah,
we've learned so much and opened the door to possibilities of change. That is
absolutely.
priceless. Thank you so much for being here with us. And the last question. What is one thing you wish everybody knew about hypnosis?
Mm. Just to not be afraid of it, that it's real, it's safe, it's studied. This is not just one thing, I apologize. It's real, it's safe, it's studied, it's powerful, it can help. It can help with so many different things and it's very underutilized because it has a bad reputation and it has just this mysticism around it because of culture, right? And just to know that it's an option for whatever you're struggling with.
Ooh, love it. Thank you so much again. We're going to drop your contact details in the comments so our listeners can connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Kristina.